Howdy, my name is Frankie Jackson. I am the coordinator of the LGBTQ plus Pride Center in the Office of the Dean of Student Life here at Texas A&M University. My pronouns are they, them. I'd like to welcome everyone wherever you may be to this Pride Live. I'm joined today by Bradley Matthews, the Assistant Director of Texas A&M University's Career Center, and Paul from the former Student Career Services, aligned with the Association of Former Students. Tonight, we're going to explore resources, rights, and responsibilities when it comes to the job search process and applying to graduate schools as members of the LGBT community. Please submit any questions that you have for Paul or Bradley over Facebook Live. You can just comment and we'll get those, or if you feel more comfortable, you can message the center directly. Now, would y'all like to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit of why you wanted to be here today to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Frankie. My name is Bradley Matthews, he, him, his for my personal pronouns. I'm very happy to be here today. I identify as a gay man, and so it's a privilege to be here and be able to share and showcase these resources to Aggies, because this is something that I did not have whenever I was a current student. So it's awesome to be able to showcase and share the resources that the Career Center has to offer to all our LGBTQ plus students. So lots of resources to showcase today, so I'm really excited.
And howdy, I'm Paul Bosky, class of 78. I'm the old guy on the crew, and I work with fitness and students, and I teach Aggies how to find contacts and how to network and how to go out and chase their purpose so they can make a difference in the world.
That is awesome. Thank you both. So I know the first thing that we wanted to touch on are some of the resources that your offices provide students and former students.
Yeah, so I'll start us off, and Paul, you can definitely chime in since you have a lot of knowledge as well. The Career Center is here helping current students and former students. We help with a lot of different things. A lot of students come to us for resume reviews. While we do help with resume reviews, and resumes are a big part of any application process, whether that be for internship, full-time job, or going into a graduate professional school program, we do help with a lot more other things as well. One common thing that students think that they can't come to our office with is just help in identifying what they might be interested in. A lot of students, before they come and talk to me, think that they have to know exactly what they want to do prior to coming into my office, and that's not the case. We have a lot of resources like SIGI 3, and we partner with counseling and psychological services for services like Focus 2 to help students figure out what you might even be interested in. A lot of my conversations with students isn't them coming in saying, I know exactly what I want to do and how do I get there? It's, I'm interested in these 5 different things, and which should I potentially go down, or how do I potentially go down these paths? So we have a lot of exploration conversations. Besides the exploration piece, we do talk about resumes, but then we talk about the entire application process. So what does an interview look like? We do mock interviews in our office. We also talk about salary negotiations and how do you negotiate with your offer. Also, sometimes helping understand your benefits and the benefits package, because salary is just one component of that. Another thing that we also help with too is applying for graduate and professional school. So what I like to say is the Career Center is here for any and everything you're interested in, whether that be full-time job or going into a graduate professional school program of your choice. So lots of resources on that front. And like I mentioned, we also help former students as well. So the fun never stops. And once you're here at A&M, you're always part of the Aggie family. So even if you graduate and you're 5, 10 years after graduation and you need help with maybe changing a career path that you want to go down, we're still here to help. Paul, anything to add with that?
Yeah, these resources, they're not just for you as a student. These are available to you throughout your career. In fact, we're not only helping people that are making career changes either because the COVID situation has rocked their world, or they're ready to do something different. Plus, we work with a lot of people that have decided that they're going to retire and they're going to do a victory lap. So these are things that you can use throughout the time that you need to earn income. And I think that's one way to think about it, is earning income, to be able to cover those things and put those resources in place that you want to pursue. I'm going to jump on share real quick because there's a couple of things I want to show you very quickly. If I can get to them. Bradley mentioned that there's a lot of different elements to the search process. And that's one thing that I want you to really be comfortable with. When you're looking at your search process, it's not just about resumes and cover letters. There's a lot of things that you need to do to come in and learn about the industries that you're interested in, to understand the needs of the people that are doing the hiring, what they're looking for. And so many people, and don't think because you're in school that you're by yourself related to, I don't know what I want to do. I work with 50-year-olds that don't know what they want to do. So that's nothing new. We have resources to help you throughout the time. The beauty of it is our resources go way beyond just clicking on assessment tools. And we have ways that you can self-help and see those items that nobody else will ever see. I want to show you one more, if I can get this thing to move for me. I want to show you one more slide. This is something that I think is really important related to longevity. We're in a real tsunami period right now, economically related to the whole COVID thing. But this recession that we're in, this is nothing new. We've had recessions going all the way back to World War II, and they happen routinely. And the key is you don't ever want to be caught as one of the persons that loses their job in a recession. What you want to do is leverage the resources that we have so you can pay attention to what's going on in the marketplace, so you can make adjustments out here so you're never that person that gets caught in a situation where you have to react to. You can stay ahead of the curve. And then one other slide that I want to show you, because it's going to be really important when we go into some of our live resources. Think about this search process differently than anybody's ever probably suggested to you. Think about a job description when you're considering a particular type of work. Think of it as a recipe for success written by the manager because they wrote it. And they're going to tell you what preparations required. They're going to tell you what the key ingredients they're looking for are. And they're going to tell you how much of those ingredients they want. And the key is, if you're talking to the hiring manager or the people on their team, they can adjust the recipe to make it fit, and it's a win-win for both of you. You're not limited to how somebody in HR compares your resume. So a lot of what we teach is about how do you go out and find what people are needing, and then how do you connect with them, respecting HR, but how do you talk to the decision makers so they say, wow, we got to have them on our team, because that's going to round us out and help us do things that we never had insider perspective to be able to pursue before. You want to leverage those extra things that you can bring to the table, but you've got to make sure they see it, and you can't depend on a resume process to do that. So I'm going to jump off stop share because I learned a long time ago when you're Zooming that you think you're changing screens and you're really not. So I'm going to share screen this way. And now we're on the Career Center page. So as a current student, you'll want to log into this particular area here, but there's also over under resources, really good tools related to the CareerTube, a boatload of handouts that we've got that you may want to take a look at. And if you come down, we've got a whole section here related to special populations. I think I'm logged in now. Yeah, so you can come in and look at your different organizations or different interest areas to be able to help you make those connections. Right now, I'm moving at the speed of my Wi-Fi, so this is really quickly, but as you can tell, there's a tremendous amount of resources. And then,
yeah, and to elaborate on this part, to this LGBTQ plus portion of our website goes into a lot of depth and really kind of mirrors the current student page, but goes into and looks at it through the lens of being or identifying as an LGBTQ plus individual. So what does that look like on your resume? How out do you want to be? And on the top part of this is like coming out in the workplace. And there is no one right or wrong decision that comes with that. It's only what's right for you. And that's mentioned right here on this page. So it is always your choice on if you do want to come out in the workplace or if you don't want to come out in the workplace. And if you do, it talks about throughout this webpage on how to do that. But we also talk about too, okay, if you don't want to and you want to keep your work and life separate, that's also possible as well.
One thing I'll throw in too is when you're early on in this process, you're new to this process, it's really easy to put a world of pressure on your shoulders in terms of I have to make the perfect decision. I've got one shot and it has to be, none of that's the case. With the resources that we have, it's going to open up a world of opportunities with a wide spread of different things you can pursue. So don't think that the first job you get is the most important decision you'll ever make in your life, because I promise you it isn't. You know, so just use the resources that we have available to you. And if you've got questions, reach out and ask us, because we're here. We wouldn't be working here if we didn't love helping people. So, you know, leverage that to your advantage. Bradley, okay if I jump over to LinkedIn?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to jump over to LinkedIn real quick because there's a couple of things I want you to see here. In LinkedIn, make sure on your homepage, this ties into your elevator pitch related to what difference you want to make. Give them a reason here to want to talk to you, you know, because of the things that you want to do with the team, with the community, whatever. Help them get a quick snapshot of who you are with this point. The other thing is you can come into this search box up here, and most people think about LinkedIn in terms of a tool that helps you network and find networking connections. But what it can really do is it can open the world up to you about what's really going on the other side of George Bush Drive and Texas Avenue, what's going on out there in the real world. So whatever it is you're interested in, if you're interested in sustainable resources, then come into sustainable resources. And I like skipping over all these. You can look at them later. If you click on this link that doesn't look like a link, and then click on more in groups, this introduces you to groups of people doing what you're interested in doing. Now you can immerse yourself in their world, learn the language, learn the buzzwords, find out who's out there doing things, what areas you want to talk about, what areas you want to stay away from. This also, when you're looking forward, tells you by listening to people what threats are coming that are going to affect my job. What's the next disruption that I need to be aware of? Because you never want to be that person that gets surprised. And then sometimes the question becomes, okay, so Paul, I'm not sure what let me show you one more thing too here. If you come into this area and remove that and just put in Texas A&M University, it takes you to the university page. And if you scroll down to alumni, here's 380,000 Aggies that want to network. And whatever you're interested in, you can come in here and do it. There you go. And do a keyword search. Let's do sustainability. Okay, I'm going to do a search. And now what this does is it not only finds Aggies that reference sustainability down in their profiles, and you can open these up and read them to see what their path, what their trajectory looked like, but you can also sort them out by where they live or where they work, what companies, or if you come to what they do, this is the roles they have in the different companies. But you can also put your major in here and find people that studied what you studied, and then go back and see that they're doing what you're doing, those would be great people to reach out to for mentors to get feedback on what that path looks like. So don't forget to leverage this resource. And you're not limited to A&M. If you're in a different community and you want to push up graduates from that particular school, just put that school. You can do the same thing. So,
and real quick, Paul, to build on this, could you also type in, remove the sustainability and type in LGBTQ on there? So same kind of thing. If you're looking at a profession, obviously typing in like sustainability can help you find that. Typing in LGBTQ will also pull up any alumni that potentially have LGBTQ somewhere within maybe their jobs as well, or if they have an organization that they're working for that directly relates to LGBTQ. So the searches are potentially limitless on here. And same kind of thing like Paul mentioned, we can't always look at Aggies, but you can pull up, for example, if you're living in Houston and you're wanting to find maybe folks that are working in Houston in the LGBTQ organizations, for example, you can type in University of Houston, look at University of Houston, click alumni, do that same LGBTQ search, and find those folks that are working at organizations that might potentially be based in Houston since they went to University of Houston.
now,
Randy, I just wanted to ask real quick, does A&M has a tool like this, doesn't it, to like find former students and whatnot?
that's
yes, the Find an Aggie feature.
Find an Aggie feature, thank you. I was trying to think of that.
Francis, that's actually a perfect segue, because when you use LinkedIn, a lot of times you don't hear back from people because they're getting hammered with requests to friend. But what you can do is, if you get a name here and you've read their profile and there's somebody that you're interested in, then you can copy their name. Oop, I didn't want to do that. I want to do. Okay, now I'm going to go to aggienetwork.com for the
and also current students, if you are trying to get on aggienetwork.com, aggienetwork.com is where you go and order your Aggie ring. So if you've ever ordered an Aggie ring, you have already set up this account. If you have not, Paul is already logged in where it says my account. There, it's very easy to set up a profile. All it does is link your name, your first name, last name with your class year, and all you do is create a username and password. So very easy to set up this profile if you have not already. But if you have ordered an Aggie ring, you should already have an Aggie Network profile.
And if you choose to set up the Aggie Network email, it's Gmail just rebranded, and you keep that after graduation, which is a good thing to do. Now, this database, the other one had 386,000 Aggies that wanted to network. This one has 450,000 living former students. So if you come in here and do a search, you should be able to catch folks. Now, one thing you have to be mindful of is if they got married and made a name change, you'll have to work through that. But in this case, I found Emily. It has an envelope. So I have the ability to email Emily. And if you click on this link, it opens up a template. This gives a banner headline introduction from one Aggie to another that helps open those doors. And it usually goes to their personal email, so you're more likely to get a response. So keep this in mind.
And what's great with this too is the email that, hey, Paul, if you scroll down just a little bit, when you click send on here, it sends, just like Paul said, to their personal email. And when they respond, it usually goes directly back to your personal email. So you do not have to log back into aggienetwork.com to see that response. It's going to go right to that email that you chose to have as your setup whenever you set up your profile.
Right. Now, you won't see, when you first use Aggie Network, you won't see their email address like I did. That's a user right thing. But when they reply back, you'll get their email address. And if you want a different address, we're going to go to a tool here in a second called Career Shift, and you can also get their email address using that tool. So that'll be a kind of a good setup for that. From the Career Center website, there's a link to launch Hire Aggies. As a former student, you have access to all of those resources, but you have to access them a different way. which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to
Hey,
go.
Paul, before you bounce off
Yeah.
of this, can you go back to Find an Aggie real quick?
Yeah.
And can you click the advanced search options?
Yes.
Wanted to highlight this really quickly. So you can always do a name search on Find an Aggie, but you can always be a little bit more strategic as far as looking at maybe an employer that an Aggie's working for, or a job title that they have, location where they're living. So if you're living in Dallas, you can type in Dallas there. Student life is any student orgs that they were part of while they were here, or you can search by degree and major as well too. What's great is, I didn't mention this on our Career Center website, but on our Career Center website, we have Who Hires My Major, which is a great resource that highlights where all graduates are going right after graduation. What's great with this Find an Aggie feature is now we can see, okay, what are Aggies doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years after graduation with my degree? And so just like Paul typed in here, we can see, okay, who's working at Tesla? We see that there's 60 Aggies that are currently working at Tesla.
And this just, when it opens up their profile, this gives you information just to help you improve your ability to communicate with them when you're talking to them. The other thing you can do up here in programs, there's 246 A&M clubs all over the world. Reach out to those Aggies, because they would not be a club officer if they didn't love Aggies. So don't forget to leverage that tool too. Now I'm going to jump over to the Hire Aggies page like an old Ag.
And again, if you're a current student, you will be going through careercenter.tamu.edu and clicking that Launch Hire Aggies button.
Right, and it gets you to this exact same page. So everything
Exactly
that you'll see is what you'll see here as an old Ag. We could spend all evening talking about how to leverage some of these resources. But we've got some video guides that I think would be really good to help you with that. But I specifically want to show you a couple of resources that I think can help you see how the world can open up to you. And so they're down on the far bottom right-hand side of the screen. I'm going to minimize my image here for a second. And if you come all the way down here to Career Shift, this is an aggregator that's the most powerful tool I've ever used. Now, when you get to this tool, don't use these links here. Use these links and think of it this way. Think of jobs as recipes for success, contacts for people by their job title or where they work, and companies based on whatever it is that they do in terms of a product or service or what they're involved in.
And Paul, before you click on that, if you scroll down just a little bit, also to highlight, Career Shift is also highlighting which companies are currently in hiring freezes, which ones are doing layoffs, and which ones are currently hiring. So if you're currently in the job search, maybe looking for a full-time job or an internship, for example, we can look a company name up to see, okay, are they hiring? Are they in a hiring freeze? So kind of a centralized area that we can go as Aggies to view what employers are currently doing.
Yeah, and this thing is hugely helpful because, I mean, it's as close to real time. People ask, how often is this information updated? And talking to the owner, as I understand it, they update every evening when they do a resync. So great resources here. Bradley, I'm going to have you give me a keyword. I wore out sustainability. Give me a word.
So I think y'all have highlighted some really, really great resources. I know we had a couple other topics and some pre-submitted questions we wanted to hit on. I think we're currently sharing a lot of those links and stuff that y'all have highlighted in there. And so I want to encourage people to go check them out. Okay. So I know one of the things that I've heard Bradley talk about, and I think it's really important, is rights and responsibilities when it comes to the job search process. And if you have any thoughts or a little bit more information about the current, I think, Supreme Court here, or Supreme Court ruling, I think that would also be great. For those of you at home, the Supreme Court ruled in mid-June that it is unconstitutional to discriminate based on gender identity and sexual orientation. So Bradley, I'll let you go.
Yeah. What's great is Paul and I were kind of talking about this morning is basically what the Supreme Court with that ruling said, that no matter your sexual orientation or gender identity, you are protected in the workplace. So which basically tells us that you have a constitutional right to be there in that workplace. That was not always the case in the past. And a lot of the presentation that I would do over this was, okay, how do we navigate some of these employers so you do have some of those safety nets? And now you do have a safety net that is federally protected. And basically what the Supreme Court says is you have the opportunity to live your life, pursue liberty, and pursue happiness as well. So you have the constitutional right to work at any employer. What I will add to that is that you will potentially want to look at employers that are maybe, if you are wanting to be out in the workplace, maybe what are those employers that are going to celebrate you that are in those places. A big place that I like to go to is HRC's website. HRC has a corporate equality index where they rate corporations on how well they do in their workplace with making sure everyone is equal, and they provide and promote equity there. And they rate them based on a percentage. So you'll see a lot of employers that have a 100% rating score, and then it'll kind of go down on there. It's very long. So what I like to do is, if you have an employer in mind, go to that and then do control find, and then find your employer on there to see what their rating is. Another quick and easy way to identify is potentially if my employer is going to potentially celebrate me if I do want to be out in the workplace, is if there is a pride. Obviously this year we didn't have a lot of pride festivities in the physical space, but a lot of cities will have pride where the organizations will participate and have a float potentially. That's an easy way to identify, is that employer potentially going to celebrate me? Because there are going to be sometimes identity groups within employer organizations that'll celebrate certain identities. And so if they are celebrating LGBTQ+, and they usually add allies in there as well too. So if you're an ally, that is something that you can also use to kind of see, okay, is this potentially going to be an organization that's going to celebrate me and promote me? And this will also now be a space where I can now bring my identity into the workspace. Because a lot of the times we'll see sexual orientation and gender identity will sometimes be your salient identity, or an identity that's very important to you, that it's hard to kind of remove that whenever you're going into the workplace. And so kind of doing and taking that extra time to make sure, okay, can I show up in this organization and still be 100% myself, is a big part of why I chose to work where I work and to work within the Career Center, because I know my identity is going to be celebrated and I don't have that fear that comes with that. And so if you are wanting to be out in the workplace, I would say, yes, you need to do some of that little bit of research to make sure, okay, that organization is going to support me. But at the end of the day, with that ruling, we know that no employer can discriminate against you or fire you based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Anything you want to add with that, Paul?
Yeah. Think about this in large part. Put yourself in the seat of the person that's across the desk from you during the interview process. And they're looking for that person that's going to add to the impact and the performance of their particular team. And so anything you can do to close the sale, because what a lot of people don't realize is, if we look back to October, LinkedIn back in October was telling us that for every job posting, there were 247 resumes. You had 15 seconds while they're going through that pile to convince them they need to spend time with you. With 40+ million people underemployed now, they're going to get 3,000 resumes. So the more things you can do to get in front of them and build a relationship with them and see how you approach things, how you did your extra homework, that you're really focused on making a difference with their team, not just a paycheck, that helps you close that sale, because the managers really have 4 questions. Can you do the job? What are you going to add to our team? Can I spend 14 hours a day with you? And the last question is, am I going to have to explain you to the boss? And the answer is, if you've done your homework and you're prepared, and they see that's the job I want to do, I want to make a difference doing that, how can they resist? especially if you've got a relationship, you're not a resume.
Yeah, and so basically what it comes down to is really spend the time to do the research. So if you're a current student and you haven't graduated yet, you have potentially some time to do that research. And if you're a former student currently seeking, while you're applying for jobs, you cannot stress enough, and I know Paul will too, is do your research and do your homework, because the last thing you want to do is go potentially in an interview and not be able to answer a question. The best way to highlight yourself in an interview and be one of those star applicants is when an employer asks you a question, you can maybe relate it to something that they're already currently doing, or that's something within the organization.
Yeah, if you've got an interest in going to the career fairs this fall, right now is when you need to be learning about companies and figuring out which ones you want to be a part of, and reaching out and talking to some of the folks that you find using LinkedIn. Start building those relationships, so when you walk into the room, they're glad you're there because you've already got a relationship.
I think, and Paul, you made a really great point, and I love this analogy, and I'm going to steal it when I talk to students, just so you know. But the recipe thing, for when you talk about a job description, what I, and I did this for this job here, right, is what I love to do is I like to take those and then line by line, I'll write down like what experience or what I've done that like relates to it. And it's just a word or two, right? But if you can, but they're telling you what they want, right? And you're the one who knows your own story the best. And so if you can like just get that cue in, but you know, like you're both saying, do your research, know your institution, know your history. Like if you can come in and be like, hey, I liked this initiative, or I saw this on your, it's a, you know, companies have Facebooks and Instagrams now, right? Like if you can relate to that, they're going to see that you're, you know, with it and stuff. And that just takes a little bit of time and just a little bit of like working on, I mean, I'm tactile, so I'm going to write it down. So that's how I'll remember it.
Francis, the one thing
that tip from you.
One thing I would add to that, because that's a great point. Practice telling those stories about those times that you did really well, because what I learned over the years doing interviews is I would get into a situation and be answering a question, and then I'd remember a point and I wanted to come back and insert it, and I'd totally mess up my answer. So if you practice those things ahead of time, you remember what the 3 or 4 key points are, and you come up with way smoother answers.
And to help practice as well, especially since we are in the virtual space a lot of these interviews are going to be held in the virtual space as well too. On Hire Aggies, where Paul took us for that launch Hire Aggies, there is a virtual mock interview tool on there. So if you need to practice maybe some of those responses so you actually give the best response that does justice to your story and maybe some of your experiences and how that marries with the job that you're applying to, go on there and use that virtual mock interview tool to help practice. Yeah,
and help them see you match their recipe.
I think we've talked a lot about jobs and resumes and those good, wonderful things, but I want to get y'all's take on applying to graduate school and being LGBTQ. What are some thoughts, tips, what are those sorts of things?
Yeah, so with applying to graduate school and professional school, an opportunity to maybe share and showcase your story is through the personal statement. So if you are wanting to bring in your personal identity, the personal statement is going to be the best and easiest place to do that in the graduate school application or the professional school application. So if you want to talk about how you show up as an LGBTQ plus individual and you want that identity to be known by the recruiters, that is your best place to go and do that. And if you are unsure of like, okay, how comfortable can I maybe be with showing or sharing my story on there, that goes back to some of the research. Okay, let's look at the organization. And so that would be the graduate institution that you're looking at. Okay, maybe let's look at the program as well too. And a lot of the times for graduate school and professional school, you're going to study something very specific. And so if you are wanting to bring in your identity on how it might even help answer some of the questions that you're going to be studying, that's an easy way to marry, okay, here's how my personal identity has helped me get to where I am today. And here how it's going to help you in your program. And here's how I'm going to go afterwards with your program and move with the information that I have and now the knowledge that I have too. Again, same thing with like applying for full-time jobs. If you don't want to show up in that space with your identity, you don't have to. So if you don't want to share that you're LGBTQ plus, you don't have to showcase that in your personal statement. But if you do, you can definitely do that. And it's definitely celebrated at a lot of organizations and institutions. And what's great too is with graduate school and professional school, we have individuals in our office that specialize in these areas. So if you want to get your personal statement looked at, you can always do that. I have had many students come in with a personal statement, and I'm applying to this PhD program in chemistry, and I'm trying to showcase my story of how I grew up as a gay man. That's something that I was able to easily look at. And then we were able to turn around and say, okay, this is how it related to his experiences that he had here at A&M and how it's now going to relate to the graduate program he's applying to. So it's definitely possible and doable to bring in your identity in those graduate school and professional school applications. And on the website that we went to underneath on the Career Center website, which a short way to get there is tx.ag/CC-LGBTQ. It does go into a lot more depth about graduate school, and it goes into a lot more depth about professional school. Dr. Ann Bloom leads our professional school advising, and she has a little statement that she wrote on the website as well, too, to go in a little bit more detail on how to bring in your identity in professional school applications.
When you're working on your personal statement or your resume, just about everybody you're competing with is going to reference that they were a leader. So take it to the next step and talk about how you led, or why you led, or how you move the ball forward, so that they see the action, not just a claim. Everybody can claim they're a leader. Help them see that you led, and give them a reason why they need to contact you or look more closely at you to get deeper answers to the questions. That assures you get that interview opportunity.
And the key word, I think, with this, sorry, Francis, real quick. The key word with the personal statement is it's personal. So this is very unique to you. There's no one set prescribed way that you have to write it. So even looking on our website at personal statement, we talk about like, here's what you can do in these paragraphs. That's just to help get you started. There is no one set way that you have to write that. And again, the takeaway is it's a personal statement. So this is all about you.
Right.
What I was going to add is, because I love your point about, everyone did leadership. I actually, when I applied to my grad program many years ago, I wrote about working for admissions, like my work, my student job and stuff, and how much, and I was going to a higher ed program and how much that meant. And because of like my statement, and I went to a much smaller school, but like it got handed to someone who worked in admissions, and that's how my GA and like paying for it happened. But, it was all about like, like someone saw it and was like, oh, let me, and networking and stuff like that. But I think you make a really great point about, making these statements personal and, highlighting unique experiences and stuff. I think sometimes student employment gets a little bit overlooked in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people tend to be too cautious on those things. Put it out there and give them a reason why they want to meet you and engage with you.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going to hop into some of our pre-submitted questions. We've got some interesting ones. I want to encourage anyone listening on Facebook, you can write those in the comments, or you can always send them directly to the center. So our first pre-submitted question is, when is it appropriate to ask an employer if healthcare coverage will extend to the partner of the employee?
Paul, do you want to start on this one? You had a good answer.
Yeah. I think my experience over the years is the rule of thumb we use is whoever mentions salary or benefits first loses, except for the employer. And so the mindset that I always have is when you get the packet and when you have a chance to go in and do the reading, I think what we're seeing is there's more and more people are speaking to that in the packet. But if they don't, that's the time you would bring that up. And that's going to help them see your ability to walk into a manager and engage them in a conversation and work through a question and work through a situation. So I would wait until I get the packet.
And so kind of go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, don't be presumptive that you're going to get the offer.
Yeah, and so to build on what like Paul said, so probably the best place is not in an interview as an interview question, because you're still trying to be a potential employee with that organization. So, You could always do some research ahead of time to see, okay, maybe who is their provider with that organization. And again, you can do some kind of other kind of searches. Okay, if they're participating in Pride parades, okay, that probably is going to be celebrated within the organization. If they have an identity group based on LGBTQ plus and allies, then you know that's probably going to be a part of the benefits package. But the best place is once you actually get the job offer and you see the benefits package that's a part of that, that's the best place now to, okay, let's see, is this actually a part of my benefits? And can this extend to my partner?
Yeah, one other thing I want to add to that we didn't talk about earlier, but I think this is like really important, and that is when you're getting into the interview process, you're amped up and your heart's beating and you're trying to make a great impression on people. And what most often happens is you miss things that other people say to you. So really slow down and listen, because they're going to give you clues and hints. You're going to see things in the offices as you walk back to somebody's office. You're going to see information in there that gives you hints and indicators. Pay attention to those things, because what I'm saying is just slow down and breathe and take it in and pay attention to what's going on around you. Don't spend all your time thinking about what's the next great answer I can give them. What they're looking for is somebody that can listen and move forward as part of the team.
That's awesome. I feel like a theme I'm hearing from you, Paul, is that we need to just calm down a little bit and take deep breaths, prep, and not psych ourselves out. So that's what I'm hearing. So I want to amplify that.
Yeah. Don't take yourself out.
Yeah. So our next pre-submitted question is, all right, so do you think that nowadays in the US, it's safe enough to mention on a resume being an LGBTQ plus activist or tied to the LGBTQ plus community in some sort of way?
Bradley, or you want me to?
Yeah, you could start it off, Paul.
Okay, actually, I think this is two very separate questions. On the one hand, do you reference that you're a member of the community? Absolutely. In fact, there's probably going to be some leadership activities that you've been involved in that you're going to incorporate into your leadership section of your resume, or when you're answering the tell me about yourself question. But just remember what I said earlier. It's not just, don't tell them you're a leader. Practice the story so that they can see how you utilize those skills and that perspective to make a positive impact and a positive difference where you are at. Because that's what they're looking for, is an impactor and somebody that can make a difference.
And to build on that first part of the question with what Paul said, is really highlighting, so if you did do LGBTQ advocacy work and you're maybe not going into an advocacy type position, what skills did you gain in that position and how does that relate with the organization? Just like Paul said, you have, and Paul has used this analogy too, is you have a grocery basket and we have a grocery list. We need to make sure all of our groceries are in that basket. And the organization and the employer is telling you all the groceries that you need on that list. So that LGBTQ advocacy work that you've done, you've gained a lot of skills, potentially leadership, communication, and the list can go on, teamwork being another one on there. Make sure you're highlighting those skills so the employer doesn't look at that and say, okay, what did they get from this? You're telling them exactly what you got from this and how it relates to the position you're applying for.
Right. And that was kind of what I was going to say related to the other part of the question. There's going to be a spectrum, where on the one end, they've got absolutely no interest in it and it's just going to be an issue. On the other end, that's precisely what they're looking for. So figure out where you want to fit on that spectrum and then invest your time on that target region, because that's where you're going to need to invest. And there are so many companies out there, or nonprofits, or agencies, or state or federal. There's so much out there. So find that zone that fits in where you want to make a difference and concentrate your efforts there.
feel like I'm hearing from both of you, like transitional skills, like we're, just and owning, what you're getting out of things, whether, like activism, it's like organizing and leading and logistical work. Like sign painting is great, but there's so many other parts of like what goes into organizing. But again, like owning your story and stuff.
Yeah, be who you are.
I love that.
Yeah, and to build on the be who you are and the stuff that you've done, on our website underneath the resume portion, we do have an action verb list. So if you're struggling with how do I communicate these communication skills, how do I communicate the management skills that I've done, how do I communicate the organization skills, we have a whole list of action verbs on our website that you can pull from. And the next part of that is don't use the same action verb for everything. Diversify the action verbs you're using. Because if you're applying potentially on LinkedIn, or if you're applying for jobs that maybe are going to get run through an algorithm of some kind, we want as many action verbs on there that are going to highlight your diverse experiences that you've had.
Yeah, remember the number one comment that most people make related to their number one issue at their company is communication. Help them see you're a communicator, that you can convey a concept and an idea.
Awesome. So next one, sort of a tough question. What is the most appropriate way to handle harassment or homophobia in the workplace?
So this one, it is kind of a tough question. The best response that we kind of have for that is potentially going to your HR office. If you're within an organization, you want to potentially follow the channels that are already within your organization. By design, they should be there to help protect you. And hopefully, if we've done the research ahead of time, we know that this is potentially an organization that is celebrating this identity as well. If you're out in the workplace, then we know that HR is going to very much value this, and they're going to prioritize it as well. You could also always go to your supervisor as well too, and roping your supervisor in on it, depending on how large the organization. Paul and I were kind of talking about this question as well too, and if it's your supervisor that is doing the discriminating, then you're definitely going to want to follow the HR kind of protocols that are there. What we know at the end of the day, again, that we talked about is that you do have the federal protection. So no one can fire you based on being gay or based on anything underneath the LGBTQ plus umbrella. And so you're just going to want to follow the appropriate channels within your organization. What you probably don't want to do, and sometimes we find ourselves in it, especially being on social media, it's very quick to put something on social media and kind of vent through that space. What you don't want to do is that, because then the organization might react as well, and we don't want that. So if you follow the appropriate channels, that's going to be the best way to go about that. Anything to add with that, Paul?
I think that's very much on point. The one thing I would say is we're kind of in a Facebook world now. And so people are constantly just spewing stuff out there. And when you're starting to work through some of these situations, I don't think this is a Facebook moment. This is a case where there's processes and systems in place. The companies you want to work for have thought about this, and they've got people in place that can help you negotiate these situations. So this is not something to be speaking about through all your peer workers and other people in the organization. There's a process, and I would say work it. If it's your manager, then you definitely want to connect with the HR folks, because this is a situation that if they haven't dealt with it, I can assure you they've studied it and read about case studies to help make sure that this is done right the first time. You know, most people, when they're dealing with these issues, their focus is, we got to do this right the first time.
So I wanted to touch on something you said about not going to your peers and sort of like chatting about it. So I think sometimes it's hard when you're first in the workforce and, if you experience homophobia, to recognize what's going on. Would you recommend talking to a mentor, or, what are those ways of like, because we talk something human, but how do we process that before maybe going to HR? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I can start, and then Paul, if you want to add. Something that I've done in my past too is, you have a mentor, and that mentor is there to kind of help assist you. And I like to externally process things to make sure, okay, am I making this up? Am I seeing this with very clear lens? And so if your mentor is within the organization or outside of the organization, that might be a good kind of sounding board to make sure, okay, am I actually looking at this right? And is this potentially happening to me? And then they might help you see clearly, okay, let's look at the HR process to make sure you're following the process that we need to go through. So I would say, yeah, potentially a mentor would be a good person to go to. What I think Paul is mentioning is the last thing you want to do is go talk to all your team members or go talk to this department over here and start kind of creating a gossip or rumor mill, because that's not going to work in your favor.
Right. The one thing I would add is a lot of companies are trying to establish mentor situations at companies, but one thing that always seemed to happen when I went to work for companies, and I was private sector for 27 years before I came back to A&M, so multiple companies, but I pinned my ears back and worked my rear end off, and invariably there's somebody else that's a leader in their organization that are going to spot your effort, and they're going to want to be a champion for you. And they're going to go to bat for you at different times to make sure that you get considerations. And I can assure you, those people are watching. They're going to pick up on those situations, and they're going to help you through those as well. So, don't be afraid if somebody starts providing suggestions or ideas for, if you do this extra thing, it'll yield some results, and you notice that there's this kind of champion relationship coming on. That's a career changer. If you go out and study people that have been the huge impact players in companies, try to help that along. But yeah, what you really want to do is avoid the rumor mill if at all possible. Because you played the game. Somebody says something and somebody else repeats it, and somebody else. It takes 3 comments, and yeah.
And what Paul mentioned, like with your mentor, a lot of organizations are going down like the mentor-mentee route. A lot of times your mentor is somebody potentially in a higher leadership position than you. What Paul mentioned is they usually want to help champion you, and they're kind of your advocate within the organization. And what's great too is if you are potentially experiencing homophobia or discrimination within the workplace, and it maybe is your supervisor, okay, you might use your mentor as a sounding board and you'll follow the HR processes, but now your mentor is in a potentially a leadership position to make sure that this actually gets followed through and addressed as well.
I want to put this out there, shameless plug. But the Pride Center does have a mentoring program where we hook up students with current faculty, staff members, and former students and stuff. And I met my mentor while I was in college and stuff. Like, that was a relationship we started, and then that's carried over through now a lot of my career. And so even if you're not interested in LGBTQ mentor, I know the Career Center has a variety of different mentoring programs that could be more career aligned or interest aligned. And so I think starting a mentoring relationship right now and having someone external can be really helpful just for thinking through processes and possibly connecting you with people and organizations.
Yeah,
and something to go ahead, Paul.
Start now. That's good practice. Learn while you're in school and you've got the opportunity to learn.
And with the Find an Aggie feature as well too, and the LinkedIn Finding Aggies that are out there, you can easily find potentially a mentor that way. But that's also a great time too, if they're working at an organization you're interested in working at. Something you could potentially ask is, what is the climate like for people of diverse populations? You're keeping it very broad, and then when they answer, then you can maybe ask something more specific. Okay, what's it like for LGBTQ folks within the organization based on their response as well too. So again, it kind of goes back to the research as well too, to find an organization that is going to help protect you, but then also celebrate you at the same time.
So we have some Facebook questions real quick if y'all have the time. Are there LGBTQ networks that people can join to help find jobs and support once they have a job? So real quick before you two answer, shameless plug again.
Yes.
We have our constituent network, Aggie Pride, who does a lot of programming and other stuff, is the Wealth Network. So shout out to them. I know Brad, who's the president of Aggie Pride, has been working really hard to expand the network and connect, and they do a variety of things. And I know some of that is implement based. But now I'd like to hear from you two and your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'd say definitely the constituent network group is a great one to kind of be a part of an organization that's LGBTQ plus, and they're also former students. So great one to be a part of. If you're looking for other kind of networking groups, there could be ones based in cities as well, because I know there is a Houston-based one. So there's a Houston LGBTQ plus networking group that brings in folks from all different types of businesses. It's not one specific type of business. So what's great is now I'm networking with folks that are potentially like me, working at a variety of organizations, which will also help you in your long-term career path. Because if you're looking for potentially the next jump, that might be somebody that you meet there that helps you with that jump. There is also, and I think I mentioned this in the beginning, sometimes within the organization, especially if it's a larger organization, there might be a professional network group within, and usually that's LGBTQ plus allies. So that's another kind of networking group. So you're kind of looking at potentially one within your organization. You can look at one within the area that you're at, and then you also have the former student network one as well.
Yeah, I would look at industry associations because they're going to have subcommittees that have those focal areas. When we were in LinkedIn, and you find those former students that referenced it in their profile, scroll down to the interest section on their profiles, and they'll reference groups that they're participating in. That could give you a good guide, and you could reach out there. That could actually be a point of conversation when you're reaching out to them. And then for sure, do that search up in the search box and find groups that are gathered nationally, because there's clearly going to be groups that are formed.
Thank you all. And our last question sort of gets back at resources. Do you recommend students upload their resume to LinkedIn? And do you have any profile tips for LinkedIn?
You want to start, Paul?
I don't know that I've necessarily loaded my resume on LinkedIn, but my profile very much parallels my resume, and it's searchable by employers, but it gives you a chance to soften it up a bit and help them see the human side of who you really are. It's not just bullet points in your profile. I think it tells a better story. So that's what I try to leverage. The one thing I try to do is not overexpose myself on putting resumes at places where third parties can go in and harvest resumes and then explode it out all over the place, because that actually waters down the power of your resume.
And to kind of build on with that too, is there's really no reason to recreate the wheel when you're building out your LinkedIn profile. So if you have kind of bullet points or action verbs already established with your experiences, that's the same kind of stuff you can post in the description on your LinkedIn profile. And also for current students, a lot of the jobs you're applying to is, yes, we need to keep it to one page, and you're boxed in with this one-page resume. LinkedIn, there is no page limit on there. So if you have a lot of experiences, and for example, that's going to cover a 2-page resume, you can put everything on there and go in a lot of depth. And what's great is there is a job seeking preferences that you can enable on LinkedIn as well too. So make sure if you're actively looking for a position that you have that as on, because there was a lot of recruiters that when I was graduating with my undergrad, they would reach out to me on LinkedIn saying, hey, based on your leadership experiences, you have a lot of the skills that we're looking for. Would you be interested in this interview? And those are employers that were looking at me without me having to even apply at all. So make sure those job seeking preferences is on and you build out that LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, there's a lot of recruiters that'll spend 3 or 4 hours a day looking through LinkedIn based on keyword searches, trying to find that person that isn't out there aggressively trying to make a change, but it's exactly the person they want on their team.
And an easy way to bring in your personal identity too in the LinkedIn space is you have that profile picture that's obviously probably a very professional headshot of you. I don't recommend kind of like a group picture where you crop somebody else out and that looks obvious, or a selfie. Selfie probably isn't the best way. Get a friend to take a picture of you and do a nice headshot. When we have our in-person career fairs, a lot of our in-person career fairs usually have a LinkedIn photo booth. So that's always an option if you're going to a career fair and you're getting dressed up. Obviously, that probably won't be the case for this fall. But the banner image is the opportunity to bring in a personal piece. So if you're somebody that likes to hike, you can add in mountains just like Paul has behind him. And that's on there. Now, I will say just make sure it's professional, whatever image that you're putting in there, but that's a piece to bring in, because a lot of the time students say, do I put in a hobbies or interest section on my resume? No, we don't use that anymore, but the banner image is a place where you can potentially bring in some of that personal touch within there.
Yeah, I'm gonna go update my banner now. Mine could use some work, but I want to give you all the opportunity for some closing thoughts and comments.
Can we go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So take time to consider what's your purpose, you know, what difference do you want to go make? And don't chase from one paycheck to the next. If the place that you're going to doesn't take you in the direction to achieve that long-term goal, then be patient and use the resources we've got that help you position yourself where you need to position yourself, where you can go make that difference. The resources are there. You know, be willing to invest the time in your career. Most people just kind of jump from job to job. And I think there's just way more opportunity. And the other thing is spend more time listening than talking, because that's when you really learn how you can make a difference.
To build on what Paul said, you are the author of your own story. So no one else is telling you exactly what you have to do, or somebody is telling you that this is the job that's going to help make you successful. No one knows what job is going to be successful for you. You are the only person that can determine that this is the career path that I want to go down. So make sure that whatever career path, whatever long-term goals you have, those are really yours. And kind of like what Paul mentioned, don't let extrinsic motivators be your main motivators potentially for going into a profession. Find those intrinsic motivations that are going to help determine where you want to go. And with that, that's where you really find happiness within the position that you're looking for or the career path that you're trying to go down. And I know Paul and I have mentioned this as well, but at the Career Center, we are also here to help even after you graduate. So even if you like go into a career path and you think, okay, this is really where I want to go, and then you get in there and you're like, actually, this is not where I want to be at all. That's life. It happens. And you need help kind of navigating that. We are still here to help with that.
Yeah, if you go in and look at the top 10 list that the National Association of Colleges and Employers put together on things that employers are looking for, technical skills is number 7 on the list. It's who's the person that's going to be working with me and helping me overcome these obstacles that we're going to be working on. That's what they're looking for. Help them see you.
Awesome, thank you both. So, wow, I think we've had a really rich discussion here about career resources and all sorts of topics related to that. So thank you all for taking the time to stop by and talk with us. This has been really awesome. Want to just touch on a few things real quick. we know that these times are hard and it's going to continue to be hard. The Center and Counseling and Psychological Services is hosting Let's Talk, which is a talking program where you can come in and talk to one of their counselors. You can just register beforehand. Those links and stuff will be all over Facebook and Twitter and other places, so no worries. This is our last Pride Live. We won't be doing one in August, but we'll be back in September with a variety of topics and stuff for the fall. So please come and look for those and check them out. If you want to stay up to date on all of our programming and other efforts, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter or follow us on social media and other places. So thank you for watching at home. If you have questions, please shoot them to the center. We can always get them out to Paul or Bradley. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks.